That's what I call hitting a double. So we grow a company to the size where it sticks. So if you go down the Jefferson Corridor, you will find a really beautiful building that's got the Thomson Reuters logo on it. That's the company that we sold Prolo to. And that building is still here in Albuquerque because of that company from years ago. We created enough of a base around it that it just made more sense to continue to grow that business here than to suck it up and move it somewhere else. And that gives us another Fortune 500 company that has a division in Albuquerque that gives us a presence here. So I tell that story, and it's not unusual for somebody to say, well, you can't be Silicon Valley. And I'm okay with that. If I want to live in Silicon Valley, well, I would move to Silicon Valley. And I don't want to spend my life on one-on-one. I love living here. The best part, I'm actually going there tomorrow. And the best part will be that I get to come home. I get to be here because I love what it's like to live in New Mexico. And the excitement and vibrancy and all the things that are happening in Silicon Valley, it's wonderful, but I would rather be here in New Mexico. So the issue is that Silicon Valley, this is I'm not sure why I'm doing this, putting Brad Pitt up there next to me. Silicon Valley is the New York Yankees of startups, right? They've got all the name talent. They've got all the money. They're really good at playing the game. They hit a lot of home runs. But here's the thing. We can take the Billy Bean approach to getting into the game. We can take the underappreciated players, and they're here, right in our community. The entrepreneurs that are already here. This is my favorite piece of research from the Berkins Institute, because every community would like to attract entrepreneurs. But here's the really ironic part of that. You don't attract entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs build businesses wherever they are at the time they have the idea. And when you think about that for a moment, it actually makes complete sense. Because if I'm going to go off and start a new business, I need to leverage the network that I have. I need to be able to do that friends and family around. Well, I'm not going to, after I come up with the idea, immediately move somewhere else where I don't have any friends and family and don't have the ability to do that. And so people build businesses where they are. So we don't need to attract entrepreneurs. What we need to do is a much better job of helping and supporting the entrepreneurs that are already in our community. And we happen to have a really amazing advantage in that regard, which is that we've got a lot of really smart people here with a lot of great technology and a lot of great ideas. And all we have to do is decide to go help those entrepreneurs, turn them into players, put them on teams, and get them into games. And if we do that, and if we follow the Billy Bean approach, his insight was that the way that you win games is not to focus on home runs, but instead to focus on hits. And Silicon Valley is completely focused on hitting home runs. What we're doing instead is focusing on getting those hits. And you get enough at bats, and you get enough hits, you are also going to hit some home runs. And this is the really important part where the analogy breaks down, because there isn't just one World Series. It doesn't matter how many home runs they hit in the Valley. We can play as many games as we want and as many of our own home runs as we desire. We just have to choose to do it. And this is such an amazing time to choose to do that. So in the .com era, if you wanted to build a web company, you were looking at a $10 million price tag in order to get in the game and see whether the idea you had really worked. This is how we ended up with pets.com for, I don't remember how much money they raised. $1 billion? What? It was a ridiculous number, right? And it doesn't take that anymore. Now you can do the same easier for us to put those teams together and get in the game. We can take the really great ideas that we've got, and it's so much more realistic to actually find out what really works. And so that's exactly what we're doing. We have created a new organization called ABQID. And the first thing that we do is go out and run entrepreneur boot camps. And what we're doing is taking lean startup methodologies. And let's put a little depth into that. So there's a professor at Stanford named Steve Blank, and he teaches Engineering 245. It's a class that he's been teaching for 20 years now. And it's how you build a startup and turn it into a scalable business. So his definition of a startup is an organization in search of a scalable business model, which is actually a really brilliant definition, because what he's looking for are teams that have the ability to take a business and grow it really fast. And that's what we're after with ABQID. And the way we start is to go out in the community and run boot camps where we get entrepreneurs to self-identify and come forward. Say, yeah, I want to create something. And it doesn't matter what it is. So we ran our first one in CNN, and we had a guy who wants to create a mobile diesel mechanic service, which is a pretty cool idea. Now, the lean startup philosophy is, let's go out and talk to customers before we go invest in the truck and the tools and all the things necessary to do that, and find out what is it that they really want. So, Blake's process is all about going out and talking to customers, learning, taking every assumption you have in your business, testing it, coming up, really important part is in validating those assumptions, coming up with something new, going back out to the market and doing it again. And if you do that for every part of your business, you end up with a really great business. So we don't write 50-page business plans anymore, which frankly have always been kind of a joke in the startup world, because a month into the startup, that thing is in the trash can. Right now, it's one page, the lean business model canvas, that has all the different elements that make up your business and the assumptions that drive that business. So we get entrepreneurs to come forward for whatever kind of business they want to create. And then we connect them with the right resource for whatever makes sense for their business. So we have an amazing number of resources in our ecosystem here. West, and Axiom, and TVC, and so on and so forth. And so what we do is make that connection between the entrepreneur and where they should really go in order to make their idea run. And in the process of doing that, we find the entrepreneurs that have really big ideas, that are working in an area that's really big, where we see that scalable business model, where they can create a business that grows and creates jobs very quickly. Those businesses we bring into the ABQID Accelerator. I don't want it to take 10 years anymore for an entrepreneur in our community to learn how to build their business. What we've done is brought together a tremendous number of mentors, serial entrepreneurs who have chosen to live in Albuquerque and have the desire to help these entrepreneurs get there much, much faster. And the end result, let me give you an example. So there's a company called Blue River Systems, really bright guy, works on robotics, and he came up with a robotic lawnmower, which is pretty cool. A little expensive to use around the house. But he thought, well, who has really big lawns? Golf courses. They would love to have a robot that just went around and mowed their lawns for them. And so he started building this thing. He fortunately also enrolled in Engineering 245, and Steve Blank said, well, let's go out and let's talk to some owners and managers of golf courses and find out what they think. And so they went and talked to them and said, yeah, it's a little annoying that we have to actually find somebody to hire and to ride around on this thing and mow the lawn. And so that would save us some money. So how accurate is your robotic lawnmower? And so it's 99 point whatever % accurate. Say, well, that 1% of the time that it messes up the fairway, it puts us out of business for 2 weeks while we wait for the grass to grow back, that's not a risk that's worth taking for the money that we're going to save. So their entire business plan is thrown out the window. And Steve Blank says, well, let's go talk to some other potential customers. This is really cool that you have a robotic lawnmower. Let's go find somebody else who'd like it. We end up talking to lettuce head farmers. There's evidently a lot of lettuce grown in the Central Valley in California. And they have a really big problem, which is they can't get enough people hired to go in and pick all the weeds around the lettuce. And they're okay if every once in a while you knock off a lettuce head. The important thing is we're getting rid of all those weeds, and then they actually figured out how to do something that was even cooler, which is to know exactly what the spacing of the lettuce head should be, and take out the one that's in the way that's going to stop it from growing long term. And that turned out to be a great business. Customers loved it, big value proposition. They raised millions of dollars, and now they're in the process until they're a really cool company. Only because they went through Steve Blank's process and understood what the market wanted. Now, the end result of this is pretty impressive, because it's not easy to do this. When you go out and create startups, normally you get 1 or 2 out of 10 that become sustainable businesses over time. Those just aren't great odds. However, if you take those startups and you run them through the accelerator, you instead get 7 or 8 out of 10 that become sustainable businesses. Because you've created a tested, scalable business model that's worth taking out to market. I want to give you a more specific example of this. We're doing it right now with ABQID, but we have been using this same approach long before it was called Lean Startup, long before it had a cool name behind it, to build startups right here in Albuquerque. And we have a really great example that's coming up with the replacement for the phone book that you threw in here. And because of that company, we were able to recruit a really amazing CEO to move from San Francisco to Albuquerque. And Mark was last running the UK Yellow Pages company, which is a 700 million pound business, 1,500 sales reps out selling small businesses. And so Mark was very much living this problem. And the reason they brought Mark in is to build their digital business. And he went from scratch to a 200 million pound business in 3.5 years. And used that company as a laboratory to figure out how to solve this problem. What is the replacement for Yellow Pages? Now, normally if I was going out looking for a startup CEO and say, well, you have a really big company, which is very impressive, I'd actually be a little bit worried about that. But Mark was also the co-founder of Switchboard.com, which was one of those $10 million .com era companies. That was the first significant online directory company, which they took to IPO. And so he's done both sides of it. So, Mark, can you come up and